My name is Emily Hayes, and I was 27 years old, standing on the precipice of what I believed would be the happiest day of my life. My fiancé, James Miller, and I had been together for 3 blissful years, a whirlwind romance that had culminated in a picture-perfect proposal on the Oregon coast. We lived in a charming bungalow in Portland, our lives interwoven with comfortable routines and shared dreams. The wedding was set for a glorious summer day at a vineyard just outside the city, a place we'd picked because of its sweeping views and rustic elegance, a perfect backdrop for our love story. Or so I thought. James was everything I ever wanted. Kind, ambitious, and with a laugh that could chase away any dark cloud. He was adored by my friends, respected by my family, and he treated me with a tenderness that made me feel truly cherished. Our relationship wasn't without its minor bumps, but we always navigated them with open communication and a commitment to each other. He was my rock, my confidant, my future. The thought of spending forever with him filled me with an almost unbearable joy. Every detail of the wedding had been meticulously planned, from the artisanal floral arrangements to the locally sourced menu. My dress, a delicate lace A-line gown, hung in my closet, a tangible symbol of the future I was about to embrace. Then there was Karen, my stepmother. She swept into my life 5 years ago, a vibrant, almost ethereal presence who captivated my father, David. She was 10 years younger than him, strikingly beautiful with an impeccable sense of style that always seemed to turn heads. Karen had a way of commanding attention, effortlessly drawing every eye in a room, a trait I'd always found both fascinating and at times a little unnerving. She was charming, witty, and always perfectly put together, never a hair out of place, never a wrong word uttered. She was the kind of woman who always seemed to be performing, even in casual settings, and she relished being the center of any social gathering. While I wouldn't say we were close, I'd always tried to foster a good relationship with her for my father's sake. She'd even taken on a significant role in helping plan the wedding, offering her expert advice on everything from the seating chart to the cake design. Looking back, her eagerness to be involved should have been a red flag, but at the time I simply saw it as her trying to be helpful and part of our family. The night before the wedding, a wave of nervous energy coursed through me, making sleep impossible. The anticipation was exhilarating but also a little overwhelming. I tossed and turned for what felt like hours, my mind racing with last-minute details and the immense gravity of the commitment I was about to make. Around 2 a.m., a sudden impulse struck me. I had a small, custom-engraved watch for James, a surprise gift I'd been holding on to. I decided I'd sneak over to his hotel suite, just a few blocks from my own, and leave it for him to find in the morning. A little pre-wedding good luck charm, a silent gesture of my love. The hotel, where many of our out-of-town guests were staying, was quiet at that hour, the lobby dimly lit and deserted. I knew James was in suite 304. I approached his door, my heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and anticipation. The door was slightly ajar, casting a sliver of light onto the plush hallway carpet. A soft murmur of voices reached my ears, too indistinct to make out, but enough to confirm he was awake. I pushed the door open gently, intending to tiptoe in, leave the gift on his nightstand, and slip away unseen. What I saw in the next instant froze me to the spot, every nerve ending in my body screaming in protest. There, bathed in the soft glow of a bedside lamp, were James and Karen. They were entangled, their bodies pressed together in a way that left no room for innocent explanation. The air in my lungs seized, my vision narrowed, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. My brain struggled to process the image, fighting against the undeniable truth unfolding before my eyes. My fiancé, my stepmother. It was a grotesque, nightmarish tableau that shattered every illusion I held. My hands began to tremble violently, but amidst the visceral shock, a cold, clear thought pierced through the haze of disbelief. Proof. I needed proof. With shaking fingers, I instinctively pulled out my phone, the screen a blinding beacon in the dim room. I steadied my hand as best I could, zoomed in, and started recording. I made sure their faces were clearly visible, the intimate betrayal captured in stark, unforgiving detail. Every touch, every whispered word, every movement, etched forever into my phone's memory. I backed away silently, the soft click of my phone's camera the only sound that might betray my presence. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anguish and betrayal. I pulled the door shut just as quietly as I'd opened it, the soft click echoing like a gunshot in my ears. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly as I stumbled back towards the elevator, my legs feeling like lead. I managed to reach my car, fumbling with the keys, my hands still trembling uncontrollably. Once inside, the dam broke. Tears streamed silently down my face, hot and relentless, blurring the familiar streets of Portland as I drove aimlessly, every mile taking me further from the life I thought I had. The surprise gift, still clutched in my hand, felt like a burning ember, a symbol of the love I had so naively believed was real. The watch, my intended gesture of love, felt like a cruel joke now. I drove until the sun began to paint the sky with the first hints of dawn, my mind a chaotic swirl of disbelief, pain, and a chilling nascent resolve. I sat in my car, parked haphazardly on a deserted street overlooking the Willamette River, the first blush of dawn painting the sky in soft oranges and purples. My phone felt heavy in my hand, a digital Pandora's box containing the irrefutable evidence of my shattered world. I replayed the video over and over, as if by sheer force of will, I could change what I had seen. Each frame was a fresh stab to the heart. James, the man I was supposed to marry in mere hours, and Karen, my own stepmother, in an intimate embrace. The clarity of the footage was excruciating, leaving no room for doubt or misinterpretation. It was real. This wasn't some twisted nightmare I could wake from. A cascade of memories, previously innocuous, now replayed in my mind with sinister clarity. Karen's past behavior, always a little too flirtatious, a little too keen to be around James. I remembered occasions where she'd insist on joining us for dinner, or subtly touch his arm when she laughed at one of his jokes. At the time, I dismissed it as her usual effervescent personality, a harmless characteristic of someone who enjoyed being the center of attention. Now it felt like a chilling prelude, a dance of deceit unfolding right under my nose. And James's recent coldness. I'd attributed it to pre-wedding jitters, the stress of planning, the natural ebb and flow of any long-term relationship. He'd been distant, preoccupied, quick to snap. I tried to coax him into talking, but he'd always brushed off my concerns with vague assurances. Now it all clicked into place, a horrifying puzzle finally complete. The pieces, once scattered and meaningless, now formed a picture of profound betrayal. The late-night calls he'd taken in hushed tones, the sudden business trips, that seemed to coincide with Karen being away from my father's house. I was foolish, I thought, incredibly naive to have been so blind. My first instinct was to scream, to lash out, to confront them both right then and there. But a deeper, colder part of me held back. What would that achieve? A messy, public confrontation in the middle of the night, hours before our wedding, would only serve to humiliate me. I pictured the headlines, the gossip, the pitying stares. Well, I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Not yet. The pain was a raw, burning inferno within me, but a steely resolve began to solidify around it. I needed to talk to someone, anyone. My fingers hovered over my phone, scrolling through my contacts. My best friend, Sarah, was the only person I trusted implicitly, the one who knew me better than anyone. I called her, the sound of her sleepy voice a small comfort. "Sarah," I choked out, my voice raw with unshed tears. "I can't do it. I can't marry him." I didn't elaborate, couldn't bring myself to voice the horrific truth. She was immediately awake, her voice laced with concern. "Emily, what are you talking about? What happened?" I mumbled something about cold feet, about feeling overwhelmed, anything to avoid revealing the full extent of the devastation. I promised to explain everything later, once I'd had a chance to process it. I hung up, the words of explanation trapped in my throat, a heavy knot of unspoken agony. I drove home, the sun now fully risen, casting long shadows across the empty streets. My house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum of broken dreams. I wandered into my bedroom, the scent of fresh flowers from the bridal bouquet delivery filling the air. My wedding dress, pristine and white, hung on the closet door, catching the morning light. It looked almost angelic, a cruel mockery of the hell I was living. I collapsed onto my bed, staring at the ceiling, my phone clutched in my hand. The video, my secret weapon, my silent witness, was saved, a constant reminder of the truth. Hours crawled by, each second an eternity. My mind replayed the scene, the whispered words, the entwined bodies, an endless loop of torment. The raw pain began to morph slowly into something sharper, colder, more precise. Anger. A quiet, simmering rage that hardened my resolve. By the time the first rays of sunlight fully illuminated my room, washing over my wedding dress, a chilling clarity settled over me. My eyes fixed on the pristine fabric, once a symbol of hope, now a canvas for my revenge. The raw, desperate pain had transformed into a singular, unwavering purpose. The tears had stopped. My heart, though bruised and battered, beat with a new, fierce determination. I would not cower. I would not simply walk away in quiet despair. I would not let them get away with this, not without facing the consequences. I looked at the dress, then at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes hardened with a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. I whispered the words, a chilling vow to myself, a promise etched in the depths of my shattered soul. Today, I will show everyone exactly who they really are. The wedding would go on, but not in the way anyone expected. It would be a revelation. Reckoning. The hours that followed were a blur of mechanical movements. I showered, dressed, and even applied makeup, my hands steady despite the earthquake inside me. Each action felt deliberate, a step in a meticulously choreographed performance. My bridesmaids, Sarah among them, bustled around me, their excitement infectious, yet I remained detached, a silent observer in my own life. They commented on my pallor, on the dark circles under my eyes, attributing it to pre-wedding jitters and a restless night. I offered weak smiles and vague assurances, my mind miles away, rehearsing the moment that was rapidly approaching. My father, beaming with pride, walked into the room, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He hugged me tightly, whispering how beautiful I looked, how happy he was for me. It was a dagger to my heart, knowing the devastation that awaited him. Karen, ever the radiant one, flitted in and out, offering last-minute suggestions. Her voice a little too bright, her eyes a little too watchful. She looked at me, a quick, almost imperceptible glance, as if gauging whether I suspected anything. I met her gaze with an unervingly calm expression, a mask of composure that belied the turmoil within. The journey to the vineyard felt surreal. The car was filled with nervous laughter and excited chatter, but I heard none of it. My senses were heightened, acutely aware of every detail, every breath. The vibrant green of the Oregon countryside, the crisp summer air, the delicate scent of the roses in my bouquet. All seemed sharper, more vivid, as if my mind was trying to imprint every last detail before the world irrevocably changed. The venue, with its sweeping vistas and charming rustic barn, was even more beautiful than I remembered. It was decorated perfectly, a dreamscape brought to life, designed for a love story that was, in reality, a cruel deception. As I stood at the back of the aisle, waiting for my cue, a hush fell over the assembled guests. The string quartet began to play Pachelbel's Canon in D, the familiar melody usually a balm to the soul, now a haunting soundtrack to my impending unveiling. My father offered his arm, his grip firm and reassuring. I took a deep breath, composed my face into a serene, almost ethereal expression, and began the slow, measured walk down the aisle. Every step felt momentous, a deliberate act of will. I held my head high, my gaze fixed on James, who stood at the altar, a nervous energy radiating from him. His eyes, usually so warm and inviting, seemed shadowed, darting around the room, avoiding mine for the most part. He fidgeted with his tie, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. Guilt, I thought, a bitter satisfaction curling in my stomach. Karen, seated in the front row beside my father, looked utterly resplendent in a tailored cerulean blue dress that perfectly complemented her eyes. She smiled, a proud, almost smug expression on her face, as if she were the architect of this grand event, completely oblivious to the impending storm. She even winked at me, a gesture I now recognized as an audacious display of her utter lack of remorse. My eyes swept over the faces of our guests. Friends, family, colleagues, all gathered to witness what they believed was a celebration of love. They were smiling, taking photos, their faces alight with happiness. The innocence of their joy amplified the darkness of my secret. The walk felt like an eternity, each step a tightening of the spring inside me. I noticed the intricate floral arrangements cascading from the wooden beams, the soft glow of the fairy lights, the hushed whispers of anticipation that filled the air. It was all so perfect, so idyllic it almost made me falter. But then I remembered the video. The image of James and Karen seared into my mind, and my resolve hardened once more. This wasn't about vengeance, I told myself, it was about truth. About reclaiming my dignity. I reached the altar, standing opposite James. His eyes finally met mine, a flicker of something unreadable. Fear? Relief. In their depths. The officiant, a kind-faced woman who had known my family for years, began the ceremony, her voice calm and resonant. She spoke of love, commitment, the sacred vows we were about to make. Each word felt like a lie, a hollow echo in the grand hall. James and I exchanged strained smiles, our hands brushing as we stood side by side. My hand was cold, almost clammy, his surprisingly warm. Then came the moment. The officiant's voice, clear and resonant, reached the critical line, the traditional pronouncement that marked the turning point of any wedding ceremony, a moment of last chances and dramatic interventions. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the congregation, her voice ringing out with ancient authority. If anyone knows why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. A palpable silence descended upon the room, broken only by the soft rustle of silk and the faint strains of the quartet. Every eye was fixed on James and me, waiting for the ceremony to proceed. This was it. This was my moment. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a strange, exhilarating sense of power. I took a deep, steadying breath, the scent of white roses filling my nostrils. I slowly, deliberately stepped forward, away from James, my gaze sweeping over the faces of the stunned guests. I reached into the small, beaded clutch I carried, my fingers closing around the cold metal of my phone. I pulled it out, holding it up for everyone to see. The silver gleam of the device seemed to catch the light, drawing every single eye in the room. My voice, surprisingly steady, cut through the silence, clear and unwavering. Actually, I said, the single word hanging in the air, charged with unspoken meaning. I have a reason. The collective gasp from the guests was almost audible, a ripple of shock passing through the room. All eyes, now wide with disbelief, were fixed on me, the bride who had just shattered the perfect tableau. The silence that followed my pronouncement was deafening, a vacuum created by collective shock. Every single eye in the vast barn was fixed on me, the bride, standing before them with a smartphone in my hand instead of a bouquet. James, still at the altar, looked as though he'd seen a ghost, his face drained of all color, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. Karen, in the front row, had frozen mid-smile, her expression a grotesque mask of disbelief. I didn't hesitate. Our wedding had been set up with a large projector and screen to display a slideshow of our engagement photos and a growing up montage. The equipment was already connected, waiting. With a few swift practice taps on my phone, I connected it wirelessly to the projector system. A ripple of murmuring started to spread through the guests, a confused buzz of whispers and questions. What's she doing? Is this some kind of surprise? Some people even chuckled nervously, assuming it was a quirky, unexpected part of the ceremony. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The large screen behind the altar flickered to life, bathing the entire front of the barn in its blue-white glow. Then the video began to play. The room froze. The footage was clear, undeniable. It showed James and Karen in his hotel suite hours before. Their faces, illuminated by the dim bedside lamp, were unmistakable. Every intimate gesture, every whispered word, every physical touch was captured in stark, unforgiving detail. The silence that followed the first few seconds of the video was absolute, the kind of silence that descends when an entire room holds its breath, unable to process what it's witnessing. Then, a collective gasp swept through the guests. Someone in the back dropped a glass, the shattering sound echoing like a gunshot in the stunned quiet. My father, who had been sitting next to Karen in the front row, slowly, agonizingly, stood up. His face a horrifying canvas of shock, confusion, and a burgeoning fury. His gaze darted from the screen to Karen, then back to the screen, as if desperately searching for an explanation, a way to deny the impossible. Karen, who had been sitting rigid, her face pale, suddenly sprang to her feet, her voice a shrill, desperate shriek that cut through the silence. "That's a lie. That's not what it looks like. Emily, stop this." She lunged forward as if to rip the projector cable out, but my father, with a swift movement, grabbed her arm, holding her back, his eyes burning into hers. I remained calm, my voice steady, betraying none of the earthquake raging within me. "It looks exactly like what it is," I stated, my words ringing with cold precision, cutting through Karen's panicked protestations. The video continued to play, a silent, damning indictment of their betrayal, repeating the most egregious moments on a loop. Chaos erupted. The murmurs swelled into a roar of shouts and exclamations. Guests gasped, cried out, some stood up in their seats, pointing at the screen, at James, at Karen. My bridesmaids, once so full of joyous anticipation, now stood in a huddle, their faces aghast, Sarah clutching her mouth, tears streaming down her face. James, finally snapping out of his catatonic state, took a tentative step towards me. His hand outstretched, a desperate plea in his eyes. "Emily, please let me explain. It's not what you think." His voice was ragged, desperate. I took a step back, my gaze unwavering, my face a mask of detached ice. "There's nothing to explain, James. The truth is all there." People began to take out their phones, not for wedding photos, but to record the unfolding drama, to capture the shocking revelation. The once joyous atmosphere disintegrated into a maelstrom of raw emotion. Some guests, unable to bear the intensity of the scene, quietly slipped out, their faces etched with discomfort and disbelief. Others, more vocal, began to confront Karen and James directly, their voices raised in anger and condemnation. "How could you, Karen? James, you snake." The accusations flew, a barrage of moral outrage. My father, his face a mask of unadulterated fury, let go of Karen's arm and turned his back on her, his broad shoulders shaking. He looked utterly devastated, the weight of her betrayal crushing him. Karen, seeing the complete collapse of her carefully constructed facade, dissolved into hysterical sobs, denying, pleading, but her words were lost in the cacophony. James stood paralyzed, his eyes flitting between the projector screen and the furious faces of the guests, then settling on me, a desperate, broken look in their depths. The dream wedding had become a nightmare. The perfect day had shattered into 1,000 pieces. I had said what I needed to say, shown what I needed to show. My mission was complete. With the video still playing on the screen, a relentless loop of their infidelity, I turned. I didn't run, didn't hurry. I walked out of the barn with my head held high, each step deliberate, my back ramrod straight. The noise, the shouting, the crying, the chaos, faded behind me as I moved towards the exit, leaving the wreckage of their deception in my wake. The summer air outside felt cool and clean against my face, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat of the betrayal I had just exposed. I felt an unexpected lightness, a profound sense of release. The burden was lifted. I had taken back my power. I left the chaos behind me, walking out of the barn and into the quiet evening air, the echoes of the screams and shouts fading with every step. The cool breeze on my face was a welcome relief, a cleansing balm after the suffocating intensity of the revelation. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me there, only the ashes of a dream I had once cherished. I had gone in as a victim of deceit. I walked out as the architect of my own liberation. I knew, instinctively, that what had happened wouldn't stay contained within the vineyard. In the age of smartphones and social media, a moment like that was destined to become public, to go viral. And it did. Within hours, snippets of the video, shaky and raw, uploaded by various guests, flooded social media. The story, embellished and sensationalized, spread like wildfire across news outlets and gossip sites. My wedding, or rather the unwedding, became a trending topic, a cautionary tale of betrayal gone spectacularly wrong. It was surreal to see my deepest pain dissected and discussed by millions of strangers, but in a strange way, it was also empowering. The truth was out, undeniable and uncontainable. The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions and practicalities. The first few days were a blur of calls, texts, and concerned visits from friends and family. Sarah, my best friend, was my rock, staying by my side, offering quiet comfort and fierce support. The media frenzy was overwhelming, but I chose to remain silent, refusing interviews, declining to comment. My truth had been told. I didn't need to elaborate or justify it. The most significant immediate fallout, beyond the public spectacle, was with my father. He was, understandably, utterly devastated. He had loved Karen, believed in her, and her betrayal, compounded by the public humiliation, was a profound blow. It took time, but he filed for divorce shortly after. The process was messy, as these things often are, but he emerged from it with dignity, if not without scars. We grew closer through the ordeal, our bond forged stronger in the crucible of shared pain. He apologized tearfully for not seeing what was happening, for bringing Karen into our lives. I assured him it wasn't his fault. Karen was a master manipulator, and she had deceived us both. James tried desperately to reach out. His calls, his texts, his emails filled my phone. Apologies, explanations, pleas for a second chance. He even showed up at my doorstep once, looking haggard and desperate. I never responded, never opened the door, never acknowledged his existence again. There was nothing he could say that would undo what he had done. The trust was not just broken. It was obliterated, pulverized into dust. There was no coming back from that. He had made his choice, and now he had to live with the consequences. The journey back to myself was not easy. For months, I felt like a stranger in my own skin, haunted by the images, by the sting of betrayal. I sought therapy, and it was invaluable. My therapist, Dr. Evans, helped me process the trauma, to untangle the knots of anger, grief, and self-blame. She taught me to reframe the narrative, to see myself not as a victim, but as someone who had bravely confronted a painful truth and chosen integrity over denial. I learned to forgive myself for my initial blindness, to understand that love had clouded my judgment, not weakness. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild. I poured my energy into work, into my passions. I had always been passionate about empowering women, and the experience ignited a new fire within me. I left my corporate job and launched my own business, a consulting firm focused on helping women navigate difficult relationships, recognize red flags, and build self-worth. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and incredibly fulfilling. I shared my story not for public consumption, but with my clients, using my experience as a testament to resilience and the importance of trusting your instincts. Today, my life is immeasurably richer and more authentic. I run a thriving business, surrounded by a community of strong, supportive women. My relationships are built on honesty and mutual respect. I learned that true strength doesn't lie in avoiding pain, but in facing it head-on, in reclaiming your narrative, and in walking away from anything that diminishes you. I am a firm believer that some lessons, no matter how painful, are necessary for growth. My wedding day, the day that was supposed to be my ruin, became my rebirth. Sometimes you don't have to scream. You don't have to engage in a messy, drawn-out fight. You just have to show them the truth, let it speak for itself, and then, with quiet dignity, you walk away. The loudest statements are often made in silence, through actions that speak volumes more than words ever could. If this happened to you, would you have exposed them or walked away quietly?